Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today will be episode 2 of our discussion of Masonic travel.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have 3 of our usual hosts. We have Brother Craig Graham, who is a member of Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. Very worshipful Brother David Colbeth from King Solomon number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And I'm Matt Appel from Mill Creek 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And Steve couldn't be here this evening, and we're going to sort of pick up where we left off from the abruptly ending episode from last week. So I'm gonna continue by telling my awesome story that I was telling. I was going to say we were discussing the different languages, and sometimes there's a language barrier in visiting lodges. And Steve is visiting lodges that speak predominantly Spanish, and he's not a Spanish speaker. But he said there's still a level of understanding you have from just having gone to lodges and having experienced it. Even if the ritual is different in English, you still know what's going on and everything because you've been to other lodges. And I read a story once. I have no idea if it's true, but I read it online, so it must be true, right? That there was a guy who was visiting a lodge, I believe it was in the Philippines, and he didn't speak the local language, and there were very few and limited English speakers in the lodge. And the way they had him prove that he was a Mason, because they couldn't try him as a Mason, was to put all the furnishings of the lodge in the middle. They had him go out of the lodge room, put all the furnishings in the lodge room in the middle of the lodge room, and that had him put them back where they belonged. And then because he knew where the senior warden station was, and where the master's gavel was, and I don't know what else that they had there, where they all belonged, that he was able to demonstrate to them that he had been into a lodge that was open before, and that he had this knowledge of Masonry and could stay at the meeting. I just always thought that was sort of a cool story. Whether or not it's true, I have no idea, but it's an interesting apocryphal story, I guess.
I was going to say that sounds a little bit more like a hazing practice than it does a prove up in a Masonic lodge. But hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yep. So, David, have you visited lodges in other jurisdictions? I know you've been to one in BC, but
yeah, I guess my furthest reach. I'd like to do more. I'd like to travel more and outside of Washington, but I don't for whatever reason. And so I tried in Florida once and just couldn't connect. And what happens for me mostly is I'll get somewhere and I go, oh, I should have, I should have brought a suit. I should have contacted somebody. I should have whatever. Or I'm in a hurry. I'm going there for a couple of days and not for extended period of time and whatever. And so, I'll come up with a couple of other excuses too. But I have gone to see lodges and have happenstancely met people. Like we were in Phoenix, Arizona a few years ago, and stopped by the Arizona Lodge number 1, the big temple downtown, and there happened to be kind of a caretaker guy there, and he was setting up. I guess they rent their building at that time. They're renting to raves, and so they were setting up these massive 5-6 foot speakers all throughout the building. But anyway, he took us, my family and I, through the building and showed us all the different pieces and parts. And it was really cool and to take pictures in that. And I did a similar thing in Minnesota, was there unfortunately for memorial service. But I thought, I'm going to swing by the Masonic Lodge and see a Masonic Lodge and I saw, it's the old story. It's dark at night and it was wintry and there's nobody here. And I saw a faint light on in the window. And so I went and rapped on the door and didn't answer. And then I just pulled on the handle and didn't think about that. And it opened. And so I walked in and hello, anybody here? And they were finishing, I don't know if they were thinking of finishing a lodge meeting. I think they were doing a degree practice or something. And they were downstairs having some refreshment. And they were just cleaning up actually after refreshment. And so got to connect with them. But I guess the most interesting is when we were in Hawaii a few years ago, and I didn't know if I should ask my family if I could go out or not. but I looked up in the Honolulu Lodge or Honolulu building. There are several lodges that meet in that Honolulu building, I guess. And the night that I was there, I reached out and talked to their secretary, and he invited me to come. They had their meeting that night, and I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any suit or anything with me." And he said, "Oh, we wear aloha wear." And I said, "Oh, but that's aloha." He said, "Well, just a Hawaiian shirt, basically, and tan pants." And I said, "Well, I have jeans. Is that okay?" And he said, "Yeah, come on out." So there was only a handful of them, 7 or 8 guys that were there for the refreshment beforehand. But the secretary reminded me of the man that gave me my 2nd degree lecture. He was also, Horshwin was also from Hawaii, and super nice guy. And they're about the same height and everything. So I took a picture with him and was smiling. It was fun. I remember we were sitting at supper talking, and one of the questions I asked, I had never really visited, I guess, a lodge that had multiple different Masonic lodges in the same building that met on different days and different times and stuff, of course. And so I said to him, everybody's eating and stuff. And I said, "So how do you deal with different lodges? How do you set yourself apart from each lodge? How do you make yourself unique so that you have something that stands out from the other lodges that meet here at the same time?" And he said, without looking at a beat, without dropping a beat, and without even looking up, he said, "Good question." He kept eating. And I think he was referring to the 7 or 8 guys instead of 20 or 30 guys that were there. They were much more casual lodge. Honolulu Lodge, I understand, is a tuxedo lodge. I don't know if they're any better or not, but apparently they're more highfalutin. The cool thing I felt like was that this was, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's the Lodge de Progrès. It's the French lodge that meets there, and they don't do their work in French, but they have a much different ritual and a much different process. So that was fascinating to see how they conduct themselves and do different things. And so that was really, and they were going to do a 3rd degree a couple of nights later. And I really should have probably just said, "Sorry, family, I'm going to go to this." But 2 reasons. One, I'd already begged to go to that one meeting away from them for another night. We had already had plans and then second, the air conditioning wasn't working. It was dang hot in that building. But
not only hot, but tropical hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what Robin Williams said in Good Morning Vietnam, but hot and wet, not something you want to, not something you want to have. Right.
Yeah.
So it was, and of course, like Matt said, I've been to BC, and I've been to lots of Masonic functions, but lodges not so much. So looking forward to maybe doing more of that someday in the future too.
Yeah, that was, my son is going to be doing a trip to Australia next winter, or next fall, I guess. It'll be ending in December. And so my wife and I are hoping we can go down there and visit, spend some time with him in Australia, and the 3 of us wander around and stuff. So I'm trying to connive a way to visit a lodge in Australia while we're down there, because I think that would be a hoot, but we'll see. Yeah, I've managed to get to Florida, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Oregon. I guess I've been to a lodge in Oregon, and BC. I think are the only foreign jurisdictions I've been to. But yeah, it's amazing. In Oregon, one of the lodges I visited, I think I've talked about this before. They have a cave degree where they have this gigantic cave where they hold the 3rd degree, and I do the 3rd degree lecture for my lodge, and so I was following along in my head with the 3rd degree lecture, and the first, I can sort of see it in my head, like the way it's printed on the page. And so they were just going down, it was word for word exactly the same as ours for the whole first page. And then I turned the page mentally in my head, and it was just completely off the rails. Like, it was just totally different. And I was like, wait, let me, there were characters that weren't in ours, and there was stuff going on, and it was totally different. And I was just flabbergasted that it was so close and yet suddenly so not the same.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the cool things about visiting lodges like that is you can experience it's still masonry, they're still our brothers, and it's great to partake in that.
Yeah, for sure.
How did they get a hold of a cave? Like how did that lodge? Is it like attached to the lodge building, or did they have to go somewhere else for it, or what?
No, it's outside. So Burns, Oregon is in. I mean, I apologize to anyone from Burns, Oregon who's listening to the show, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And then outside of Burns, Oregon, in like a cow pasture, they have this cave. It's a lava tube, I guess they said, were from ancient time, ancient geologically ancient times when there used to be more volcanoes and such around there. And it's just a giant hollow tube that goes into the earth. And the lodge actually owns it, so they own the cave and like the whatever 100 yards around it kind of thing.
Okay.
And there's actually permanently set up inside of it are bleachers, and there's the G hanging from the ceiling and the whole 9 yards. It's huge. It's a serious cave. It's not like a foxhole.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody said that there's actually a lake in the back. If you keep going, that there's a lake back there that people whatever go kayaking on or something crazy like that. And I did not check that out myself.
I've been fascinated with the rumors that I've heard that if you go to Israel, underneath the Temple Mount, there are caves, and one or two of the Israeli lodges have meetings down there. So you are right in the heart of what the physical location where we draw the allegorical legends of our lodge meetings from. I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That would be great.
I've heard in some old European cities that your lodges are held down in the catacombs and things like that. That might be a little, might be the whole, and I'm wearing a shirt that says Memento Mori, which might be too much of a reminder if I was in a place like that. But I think, to be able to, at some point in my life, go to some lodge meetings like that and experience, a degree in an environment like that. I'm trying to imagine I all these years later, I barely remember my own degrees, but at the same time, the impression that would make on somebody new to the fraternity going through it in a physical location like that, I think would be fantastic.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, I should actually add, I've been to a Washington Prince Hall lodge. That's another. I didn't have to go far, but it's a different jurisdiction with its own. I was at a third degree there at Evergreen Lodge up in Everett, and that was another thing where it was very, very similar and yet very, very different. It was really cool.
Yeah, I just got to go to my first Prince Hall event this year as well, or I guess it was last year physically now. It was the grand raising that they did in Seattle. And so,
yeah, you were saying,
yeah, that was incredible. And then they do a grand installation too, so they install all the masters and all the officers and everything all at the same time, or at least multiples of them. I don't know, maybe it wasn't all of them, but it seemed like it was anyway. So that was really, really cool to watch that participate.
What was the grand raising? The grand raising, what was that?
There were 5. They did 5 master masons that day.
Wow. Okay.
And so they did them together, parts of it together, and then parts of it individual. And I'll let your imagination go there. And but of course it was the grand. There was Grand Lodge officers as part of that, if you will. So there was some really cool and multiple lodges that came together to do it. And so that was really cool to be part of that. And that's where I, kind of what prompted our conversation about the awards and certificates last time was because the Grand Master was giving them their certificates, their Master Mason certificates. And I had said, what is that? So yeah, it was really interesting to see, again, like Matt said, how similar, but how different it was. Yeah, I could certainly follow along with them and wanted to kind of be, part of the group, so to speak, because I kind of knew what was going on, but then I also kind of stepped back like, oh, what's going on here? This is different. But yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, that's something that people find interesting, of course, when they come and visit lodges here in British Columbia, is that there are there are four different types of forms of ritual used in this province, and within each of those four types are, again, fairly noticeable differences going from lodge to lodge. I can go down to Steve's Lodge in Kelowna, 40 minutes down the highway. And I've done lecture work in that lodge. I've participated in degrees there because those parts of the ritual are fundamentally the same. But even they open their lodge a little differently than we do. I won't get into the specifics, but some of the ways that they move through the opening of a lodge I'd never seen before. And I know that if I go up to Revelstoke or Salmon Arm or Kamloops, it's going to be the same thing. They'll be, I might see it in Canadian work, but then again, the guys that are from Canadian ritual lodges tell me it's the same thing, that, where the mother lodge came from and what particular stream of ritual. And so it's a bit of a hodgepodge. And a lot of people that have visited British Columbia from outside this jurisdiction have said it's a really interesting thing to see. So I think it's a little chaotic myself, but it's good that people have come from far and away and thought, yeah, that's really, really interesting the way that you've landed Masonically that way in BC. That's like, yeah, well, it took us 150 years to get there. So yeah.
So that was actually the Duke of Connaught Lodge from BC came down here and did we have an outdoor third degree at the Masonic Family Park up in Granite Falls once a year. And I want to say it was 2 years ago, maybe three. They came down and did the third degree on one of their candidates there. So we got to see, it's instead of having to travel to another jurisdiction, the jurisdiction traveled to me. So I got to see that.
I thought there was something I'd read somewhere recently where there was an exchange between BC and Idaho, I think, or maybe it was BC and Washington, where something was done by one jurisdiction and the other, and then there was a complementary ceremony that was done. I forget, may have involved the Grand Masters. I'm, at the age of 54, my memory starts to slip a little bit. So, start becoming old man yelling at clouds. But that's kind of what I remember, and I've seen pictures of members of the Mounties wearing aprons at lodges in Montana and things like that. So it's that happens quite a bit.
Being 53, I can't imagine what that's like. So
well, give it a year. Yeah.
I heard there was a lore at some point prior to my 17 years ago or 18 years ago being a Mason that the Mounties came down and did the open air degree, supposedly.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
That would be
well. One of the things it's gone now, but I remember when I was first being initiated in BC in '94. I'm just looking up at my certificates on the wall, framed nicely, and unlike Steve's, I actually put my signature on my certificate. So I remember bugging him about that in that episode. But nonetheless, at that time in BC, there was an RCMP degree team. So, and they principally would show up if a member of the force was being initiated, passed, or raised, they would try and get that degree team together to come and do, and I think they largely did Canadian work, but nonetheless, they would, their presence would be known. That unfortunately over the years, as the membership has declined, that it just weren't able to keep it up, and I don't think they're active anymore. And I think there was one or two other degree teams. Like I think the Vancouver Police Department had one at one point, and one of the fire departments had, or there was kind of a Lower Mainland Fire Department degree team active as well. I might be creating things here. I'm not sure, but I seem to hear things about that in the past, and yeah, I don't know.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've heard about degree teams like that in other jurisdictions. I want to say Oklahoma has an Indian degree team where they do things with the Native American dress and that sort of stuff. And I don't know much about it beyond that. I've seen pictures.
Never heard of anything like that in Washington State, eh?
Not that I'm aware of. David, have you?
No, not Native American. Oh, of course, there's, in Washington, there's all kinds of different types of, what would you call them? Dramatic degrees, the logger's degree and the engineer's degree and the what else is there, Matt? Pirate degree and
There's like a cowboy degree. There's all sorts of
degree.
wacky stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shipbuilders. I've heard of a shipbuilder's degree.
So is that actually where they get together and just emulate those people from that trade and do the or is it do I want to say it's an air quotes degree of some sort?
Heavy air quotes degree.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, degree is a strong word. Probably it's a excuse to get together, but I think they have their own little ceremony or whatever, but it's not
Yes.
a real degree, if you will. It's not
Yeah, they're not
a
making Masons.
recognized. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not making Masons. As one part of the logger's degree, the Grandmaster or who his representative gets his tie cut off. So I'll put that to you.
Okay. All right.
One year they had the guy with the telescoping. He has, I don't know what kind of vision that brother has, but he's got this telescope for his glasses, and he has some monocle vision. And so that their picture was him with the axe and the Grandmaster bent over with his tie.
Okay.
You get the guy that can't see to cut the Grandmaster's tie off.
Okay. That's the logger's degree. Because I was going to ask if the pirate degree, that sounds like something that might be performed by people that went to university in Seattle during the high point of what was it? Was it Ski Fest? Where they had the hydrofoil, hydrofoil races and everything.
Pirates, yeah.
Seafair pirates, yeah. That might have been people looking to extend that into their Masonic careers later in life.
Yeah, it's actually it started. Well, currently it's held at Port Orchard John Paul Jones Lodge. So yeah, since they have a nautical theme to the lodge, they adopted that.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
actually coming up pretty soon, as I recall, isn't it?
Did you go with, no, I think it was another guy that went with me to the last Grand Masonic Day, and we attended a lodge in BC. They opened mainly they had to have their stated meeting, but they opened, and then in the middle of that lodge, the Vancouver Lodge of Research opened.
Oh yeah.
As a courtesy, and Trevor did their business that they had to do, which I think was installation of officers. Yeah. And then they closed. But that was the lodge that River Peatman joined. And I can't think of, it was something unique. It wasn't I don't think they only meet a couple of times a year. It was a very unique lodge. Gosh, I can't remember now. I feel terrible that I can't. But what made me think of was his third degree is coming up here in a couple of months. And that lodge will be opening again, of course. And then isn't Grand Masonic Day should be coming up soon too, shouldn't it? Or is that not till May? I want to say it's Memorial Day or something, isn't it? I don't know.
You're talking about the BC one, right,
Yeah,
David?
Yeah.
I haven't been in years, and I think people were complaining that it got moved to the bad weather months at some point. That it used to be held in fairer weather, but it's not now. When you mentioned the Vancouver Lodge of Education and Research, my old lodge, Caledonia, my mother lodge, we actually, what they did at that time was when they met, they would invite another lodge to come in and open and close for them.
Mm.
So they would open and the business, whatever lecture was being delivered, and then the lodge was closed. And it was just it was a sort of a courtesy that, a lodge was asked to come to wherever they were meeting and perform all of the opening and closing ceremonies, and then the actual the education lodge officers would and they were give their lectures, and they were all very well attended meetings.
My instant research says it's April of this year, April
18th. Yep.
But when you go to their Eventbrite page, it says there's no upcoming events. So I don't know.
Funny that.
Have either of you been to Allied Masonic degree stuff? I've never been.
No.
No, I'd like to. Yeah, the All Masonic Week or whatever it is that they have out in Washington, D.C.
I just was looking at that, yeah. February 4th to February 8th this year. Talk about bad weather and locations. February in DC. No, thank you. It's almost as
it's
bad as February in Alaska. I guess it's better than February in Alaska, but not much.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's mostly Yorkite stuff. But there are other groups. I know the Philalethes Society, the put out that magazine and stuff. They have their annual meeting then and that sort of thing.
Their agenda indicates there's on Wednesday night they confer the Order of the Sword of the Bunker Hill. Excuse me. It's all these kind of things, like these red and green suspenders I'm wearing is from the Royal Order of Scotland, and I think I talked about that in other podcasts. I wear them now because it's easy to they're good suspenders and they hold my pants up. But will I ever go to another Royal Order of Scotland event? I don't know, especially not when they're held in Oklahoma. I haven't noticed I'm going to go to nowhere, Oklahoma. When I got these, it was at conveniently at the same time as the Scottish Rite event biennial in Washington, D.C. And so I was able to go and it worked out perfectly. But I'm not going to make a special travel somewhere just to go for these degrees. And so if it had been in nowhere, Oklahoma, I would have politely declined, most likely.
So having gone to DC then, did you see the big Masonic edifices there, like the House of the Temple and the George Washington Memorial?
Yeah. The George Washington Memorial was the first place I went to when I flew in. I took, I don't know, I think I took the train. I don't remember how I got there exactly. But I'd flown, it was a long day of travel for whatever reason. And it was mid to high 80s, humid. And I went through I got there just before it closed. And so I was able to get in the last tour, and I went through the tour. That was really cool. And I was waiting for another brother who was coming in. And so I was sitting in the shade, but it was still hot on, one of the massive 10 by 10 granite stones of the stairs. And I'm just going to kind of lay back here and, close my eyes. And within 30 seconds, I was asleep. And I woke up a few minutes later, my back hurt. I was like, "Oh man!" I woke up I was out. But it was warm, but it reminded me a lot. I had forgotten. I had been in Alexandria in Virginia before years ago, but I had forgotten how it reminded me of the Midwest. It was deciduous trees and kind of slightly rolling hills, and beautiful location where that monument, the Washington Monument's located in.
Yeah, I've only ever seen it from afar. You can see it from the train station there in Alexandria. It's up on top of the hill, sort of commanding the area. And that's about all I've ever seen. There it is.
It's pretty cool. It's really cool. And then, of course, being there for Scottish Rite, we were able to go to the House of the Temple and get a special tour and all that. And I got to go to there was a tombs tour, but it was basically a book study, some of the special books that, why am I forgetting his name? Was it Art de Heroes? Might have been Art de Heroes. He had pulled out several books from the archives that were his kind of favorites, whatever. And he knows way too much. He knows more than a guy should know about any of this stuff. And so he could talk about how amazing the book was and the specific details. And then he'd open the book and he'd talk about the engravings and how just everything. And so it was just fascinating, super fascinating.
He's probably just making it up.
Yeah. Works for me. Those are the kind of things I love, and I'm hoping our Grandmasters tour is coming up here in a few months, and I'm hoping still to go on that. And I'm hoping that event is kind of like my experience in Scottish Rite was at that event, to go and be interweave with the Masonic lore and ideas and tour and all that stuff. Because I've been to DC before, but I wasn't a Mason then, and so now I've always wanted to go back and kind of get those hidden secrets and learn about that stuff.
Well, I feel like we're about winding down. Now, as I say that, David looks like he's about to say something pithy.
Nope. But I guess I could ask, did we talk about why, I did my massive research on the drive home for this episode. And so did we talk about the meanings of travel, like historical roots of why Masons would travel to build buildings, and our speculative actions of travel that we get to go and visit lodges. That's kind of the connection of this past, the historic context of physical Masons traveling to different areas and different building sites. And then, of course, our symbolic journey, how it represents our journey from darkness to light, seeking knowledge. And there's three main ideas: the historic and the speculative, and then the contemplative idea of travel on the Masons.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Right at the end. I don't know. It was really kind of cool and then the next section talks about the benefits of travel. Of course, what we've all talked about: expanding our horizons, fostering camaraderie, enhancing our skill. I mean, you go and see something else. I know when I was first, when I was a new Mason, I traveled even probably more than I do now. Still, it seems like, but especially as I was going to the East my first time, I traveled to many lodges, and I would see how they did things, and I go, "Oh, I like that," and I would write it down, or I'd make a note of it, or I'd say, "Oh, I don't like that. I'm not going to do that," or And we would say in our degrees, I think, that what you see praiseworthy in others, you should carefully emulate, and what you see lacking, or whatever, what's the word, Matt? And you should carefully amend. It's like
what seems in them deficient, I think.
Yeah, yes. I remember one time, Matt probably have told this many times, but I watched installation where the new master came in to the lodge room. Instead of going to his seat west of the altar in the semicircle, that's how we do it here, he waited. And as each officer came in, he shook his hand and basically thanked them for their commitment to the lodge. And I thought, oh, that's great. So I added them to my list. And so all those kind of things, as he was able to travel around and get a little ideas, I thought, oh, I like that. I like that. I don't like that, or whatever. And I would add them to my list. And then I haven't updated it for a while, but I had a list of Masonic ideas, things I wanted to fix or change or do or whatever. And some of them have become resolutions and some of them haven't. But it's fascinating to see, even within your own jurisdiction, whether they do things differently on purpose or whether they do them by mistake differently. It's interesting and fun to see the differences in between lodges and how they do different things. And some are more formal, some aren't, and it's all good.
As we've said before, my masonry and your masonry don't have to be the same thing. That's okay.
Matthew.
Mine has a more updated ritual than yours does.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So with that, I think we've come to the conclusion, deep and meaningful, that it is that travel good. Go out there, even if it's in your jurisdiction, go visit another lodge, go see what your brothers are doing, go and experience, spend some time with them, and you always come away richer, or at least angrier. But one or the other. But with that, on behalf of Craig and David and the absent Stephen and myself, we want to thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. And if you have any exciting travel stories that you'd like to add on to our social media, please do. I as you can tell, we love hearing about them, and I'd be very interested to see what folks out there have to say about it. So please comment and let us know. And with that, we want to thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.